Hello guys, it's Kene once again. So today I will be talking about functions in Python. What's a function? A function is a block of code that gets executed only when it is called. So we create a function when we need something done. And the beauty of functions in a programming language such as Python is that you create once and use multiple times. So if I need to do the same thing in different places within my code, I don't need to write the entire, subset of code every time I need that particular thing done. So I just create, the code for it, write the code for it once and use repeatedly. So create once, use repeatedly. That's one big advantage of using functions. I'm going to go right into it so we have a clear understanding of what functions are. I'll share my screen. All right, so here are the different things we'll be talking about in this video. Define or create, I'll be talking about in this video. What is a function, which I have already done. I said that it's a block of code that gets executed only when it is called. And the question is, what does it then mean to call a function? To call a function simply means to make it, to execute it. That's what it means to call a function. So creating it doesn't mean that anything will happen. It will just be there like in storage until it is needed. You call it for it to be executed. Right. So what are the parts of a function? Now, a function has two, parts. The first part, which is the identifier part, that's basically the name of the function. And then the definition part, that's where you put the code that should run when that function is called. So let's look at it, guys. I want to create a function that, when called, will simply make the sound of a cat, meow. So let's see. I'll create a function. In creating a function in Python, you must use the def keyword, def, def make sound. Great. So, and this is the syntax, guys. Make sure there's a colon at the end of the identifier after the parenthesis. Then indent, coming to the next line where you want to define or you write the code that should be executed. You make sure there's an indentation. And what do I want done? I just need this sound printed. Meow. Right, so I have given the identifier and provided the code that should execute when the function is called. And the next thing I want to do is to call the function. And you call a function by providing the identifier, make sound, and the parenthesis. That's what you need to do to have it called. Now let me do something here, guys. Just copy this, take it off, and I will run the program and we'll see. It's as if nothing happened, but something has actually taken place. A function has been created, but we do not see it because, yeah, it's just there waiting to be used. So once we call on it, the program stored within it gets executed. So for now, there's no execution, right? So I'm going to now cause the execution to take place by calling the function make sound. And when I run the program, we'll see the result, meow. So that's it, guys. Function definition and calling a function. Now, what are parameters and arguments? In the function I have just created, guys, you see that there is nothing, in between the parentheses. At some time or at some point, you want to create a function that has some data in between the two signs there, the parentheses. You call them parameters. The data you add to the function identifier which will be used at the time of execution. When the function is being executed, the data provided gets to be used. So let's say, for example, I want to write a program that will square a number. So a number should be squared, and I don't provide a number. So what number should it be? That's why I need to provide the number as a parameter for the function that will square the number. Let's have a look at it, guys. So I'm going to say def and just create a function squared, name it squared with the colon, and within the parentheses I'm going to include a parameter, which is simply a placeholder, guys, a placeholder for the actual data that will be imputed when I am calling the function. So at this point I'm just creating it, not calling it yet. So I cannot put the actual data. It could be anything. The data changes, but I just need a placeholder to get Python prepared for what is yet to come. So I would just simply say, call it num, which in this case stands for number. It could be anything, but make sure it is descriptive. Your parameter should be, descriptive enough. Now I'll come down, and what do I want? I need the number squared. So I'm going to create a variable to store the result after the operation, the squaring operation. So num by 2. This simply means square whatever number the user or whatever number the user puts in for that particular function. So the num there is the parameter. Right. So guys, the next thing is to call the function. When I'm calling the function this time, I'm going to put actual data. The actual data provided is called the argument. So they are sometimes used interchangeably, arguments and parameters, but there's a slight difference. So I'm going to call the function squared, provide the actual data. Let me say 5 there now. Right, so that's it. I am calling the squared function. When I run my program, we'll see, oh guys, I need to see the output. So just let me print out the output, which is squared. Okay, all right, so I'll run the program. We'll see 25. So that's it. The num is the parameter and 5 is the argument. So that's it. Okay, now guys, I need to say something. If you provide parameters, in defining the function, but when calling it, you do not give the same number of arguments as there are parameters, then there will be an error. What I'm trying to say is, if I provide one parameter during function definition, then I have to provide one argument when calling the function. So I have just one parameter there. So this function, when I'm calling it, Python expects one argument since there's only one parameter. So if I don't provide an argument and I try to call that function, you see that there's an exception. There's an error there. It says squared missing one required positional argument, none. That's what it says. So let's be careful, guys. If you create a function with a set number of parameters, then the argument should also be that same number. Okay, so that's it, guys. Let me just put some other number, 3 for example, and run this again. So I have 9. Okay, so that's for parameters and arguments. Okay, guys, so now what about the return statement? The return statement in Python gives you the value obtained after evaluating whatever code, is in the function. So let's say I have a function to calculate the square of a number. Instead of just printing it, that's something like, oh, I just need it to show in my console. But this time, I just don't want the function to execute without giving me data that I can use. Because if I just say print the output, I mean, there's no data from that I can now use in some other operation within my code, right? So the data that a function returns, I mean, the data that, yeah, the data that a function returns is enabled using the return keyword. So we see the use of the return, guys. If I use return, that means I can store that output in a variable, right? Okay, so let's see. Def new squared, then I have num as the parameter. And what I want to do here now, guys, is just simply say return. What do I want to return? The evaluated value following the squaring of that number, num. So num squared, return the square of num. So guys, believe me, when I call this function, I'm going to get a value, a number value. That's it. So if I just call this function new squared and provide 6 as the argument, and I run, you would see that nothing gets shown, because I'm not just printing something, I'm actually getting a value. So the function is returning a value. If I want to see it, then I can use the print function to output the result. So I'm going to run, and we see that nothing gets displayed. So if I really need it displayed, I can now store the return value in a variable. So I can just say new or return val, returned value. That's return val there. And then I can now print the return val. Returned val, right? So that gives us 36. I hope you understand, guys. That's the use of the return statement to get you the value following the calling of that function. What value gets returned? You get that by using the return statement. Right. The next thing I want to talk about is the keyword arguments. I have been using, if you look at the code for cell 32 and the code for cell 34, you will see in definition of the functions there, I used parameters that are not named. So we can't actually use the name of the parameter when calling that function. But Python provides us another way of defining a function using keyword, so named arguments. Let's see what that means. If I say, for example, make def make sound, that's it. I'm defining and I can say animal and provide a value for it. So I can just say none. Okay. Then I will just print. Oh, now let me use the if block, if else block here. If animal is cat, guys, if animal is cat, then print. I want it to check first what animal it is, then we know what sound should be made. Meow. See the way I'm indenting? The if, elif, else have to be aligned. So elif, which is else if, dog, if animal is dog, then print whoa. Right. Now if it's any other animal or no animal is provided, to just say else, print no sound, just something like that, right. I'm going to call the function make sound, right? Great, guys. So let me just run the function. We'll see what happens. No sound. Yes, because in this case now, if I'm using a named argument, then the default provided will be used. The default provided in the definition or creation of that function will be used if I do not put any actual arguments. So that's why we have no sound there. But what if I want to provide an animal as an argument? I need to say animal, now give a value for that parameter, the animal parameter, and it's a string there. Let me say cat. So make sound and the animal is cat. What will be the output? We'll see meal. I hope you understand, guys. So the keyword argument specifies in a sense what property it is for that parameter and the value. That's it. Okay, so guys, we'll go to the next default parameter value, which is similar to what I've just talked about here. Showing us what keyword arguments are, providing parameter by giving it a name and a value. So that value we provide for a named parameter is the default value. Even if I don't, when calling the function, I don't now provide a value, the program will still run. It will run because Python will just use the default value provided. Let's have a look at it, guys. Let me make a method this time that will add two numbers. Okay. Okay, well, now let me make a constant. Let's say one of the numbers will be a constant. It's going to be 5 constantly, and the other one can vary. So 5 plus some other number that I will provide. So I'm going to give my function 2 parameters. They will both be named. They will both be named with default values. Let's see. Add nums as my function name or identifier. Now within that, I will say first number, just using fn. That could be 7, and second number could be, I would say 5. So 5 is well, I know I'm heading somewhere. Let's just have it for now like this. Then I am going to carry out the operation and store the results in a variable called ans. Fn plus Sn. So that gets evaluated and stored in ans. Then I'll print ans. Now I'm going to call the function add nums. Fn, I would say, is maybe, let me say 4. That's all. Just going to say 4. Now, what do you think will be the result of this, of calling? What do you think I will get when I call this function, add nums? Can you guess? Now, if you went for 9, might be right. If you went for 12, might also be right. You know, and if you went for 2, if you went for whatever number, you might be right. But I would think that the answer will be 4 plus 5, that is 9. Remember that I am changing the value from the default 7. The fn value has a default value of 7, but I'm changing it to 4. And for the second parameter, the default will be used. If I do not provide, if I don't change that default, then the default will be used. So if the default for Sn is 5, it will simply add that 5 to whatever new value for Fn I have. So I will run the program and we see that the answer is 9. Let's not get confused. Oh, how did we get 9? It's not using 7. 7 is the default for Fn, but that's changed in calling the function. I changed 7 to 4, but the default for the second parameter, that is the Sn parameter, remains what it is, unchanged, and the default is 5. So 4 plus 5 gives us 9. Now, guys, even if I don't provide any parameters, any arguments, I don't provide, function and Python will still use the default values. So if I don't alter or change the parameter values, then the default will be used. 7 plus 5 will be returned. That's 12. Let's see. We'll see, guys. So when I am using named arguments, then I don't need to include those arguments. If I'm using named parameters, then I don't need to include those arguments at all for them. The default will be used. All right, so coming to positional and non-positional arguments. Now you might be wondering, what does this mean? Non-keyword arguments are by nature positional and they are required. You see that the named argument on line 2 here, just okay, the cell 38, the named parameter fn and the named parameter sn, they have their values. But in calling the function, I didn't provide any argument, and the code worked just fine. I can't try it if I do not, let me go back a bit. If I do not name, if I do not name those parameters. So these two parameters are not named, like there's no key and value. So when I run without providing the same number of arguments as there are for parameters, then there will be an error. You see. So what I'm trying to say here, guys, is that parameters that are not named need to be present in calling that function. Let's just go right into it. I'll create a function, and this function I'll just call it bio data. And it will take two positional arguments. I can't, let me explain this, guys. I can't swap those two, the two bio data the two pieces of data I'm going to provide as parameters cannot swap positions. So the first one there is name. Sorry, I'm not calling, I'm just defining it, name. And the second one is age. They are positional, and please, importantly, as I've explained earlier, they are required. When I am calling the function biodata, I need to provide a name value and an age value. Okay, so I'm going to say print, or let me store this in a variable new string, and just say, let me format the string there, just using the F command for formatting string. My name, or let me use your name is the variable that should be used. The value is what is needed. So that's why I'm using the F command there, and the name of the variable within curly braces. So that will give us the value stored in it. Your name is name, and your age is just like that, something like that. Right, so that's stored in the variable nstr. Then I get to print nstr. Right. So guys, I have defined that function biodata using two non-named keywords. I mean non-named parameters. They are both requires. Yeah, they are both required. I'm going to print. Not print, rather. I'm just going to call the function there, biodata. So calling the biodata function, what do you think we're going to get? Now, I have not provided, I didn't provide arguments. There be an error or not? There will be an error. Yes, guys, and we know the reason. I'm using required arguments. So I need to provide values for those parameters. Right, so to solve that or to correct that, I'm going to just provide actual names. So let me say Kenny, for example, and the actual age of Kenny. So I could just say 23. Okay? That might not just be my age. It could be, who knows. So biodata Kenny 23 as the argument. When I run my program, I will see what gets printed. So your name is Kenny and your age is 23. You see that they are positional. If for any reason, guys, if for any reason I put 23 before Kenny in calling this function, but when I define the function, name came before age when I defined the function, but now calling the function, the age comes before name. You will see the twist. Quite, I don't know, very weird. So your name is 23 and your age is Kenny. I've used positional arguments. Every argument should occupy its own position in the order that they are used in function definition. All right. Okay, so guys, what about non-positional? Non-positional arguments. Those are simply the keyword arguments. Those arguments that parameters that have values set in the definition of the function. Let's see, guys. Non-positional. Okay, let me still use this. So in this case, the name parameter default value will be Kenny and default age. Yeah, that's what I should do. Default age is 45. That way. So guys, those two parameters are non-positional. It doesn't matter which one comes first. And we're going to see it applied here. Your name is, I get to use name, and your age is age. When calling the function, the age can come before the name. It doesn't just matter. It doesn't matter, guys. You can see, it doesn't matter which one comes before. When I was defining the function, the name came before the age. But in calling the function, I've used the age before the name. But there's still some twist. I got no error. If I really need to fix, so there's no error. I do not need to say name equals Kenny and age equals 23. No. To fix it, guys, I need to provide the name of the parameter when calling the function. So I would say age 23, then name Kenny. So once I do this, even though age still comes before Kenny when calling the function, they will be placed in their in the right positions. The two arguments will be placed in the right positions. Let's see. So you see, that's all. Your name is Kenny and your age is 23. So how come when I was calling the function, the age appears before, when I was calling the function, the age appeared before the name, but you can see the output. It's been fixed, right? The name now comes before the age. That's because I used non-positional arguments, which are by nature named arguments. Named arguments, keyword arguments. Okay, right, making progress. Now, guys, what about enforcing keyword argument usage? What does that mean? Let me just use a function to explain. I'll just copy this. You don't need to type everything again. Let me still use this function. Right, now I'm going to do something quite strange. For the first parameter, I'm just going to use the non-positional required parameter there, name. And then for the second, I'm using named parameter age, and I'm setting a default value of 45. When I run the program, what would that give us? I need to just correct this since there's no name for that parameter. I'll just provide the value in calling the function, just Kene, and we'll see what that gives us. There will be an error because name as a positional parameter in the first position should also occupy the first position when calling the function. Yeah, so that's the problem. To fix it, guys, just bring Kine in the first position there. Simple. And when I run my program, I see your name is Kine and your age is 23. Right. And then I can also just change this again. Just have age so that I don't need to name it again in calling it. It's positional, right? And it's not named. When I run, everything appears okay or is okay. But guys, what I want here now is to enforce keyword argument usage. So for the second parameter, I want it such that I must use a keyword argument, not just the positional or named argument. So what do? I would include an asterisk in between. So everything to the right of the asterisk must be a named parameter. And everything in front doesn't have to be. It could be, it may not be. It may not be a named parameter. So guys, when I run this program now, you will see that an exception will be thrown. There will be an error here. So let's see what that tells us. Biodata takes one positional argument, but two were given. Takes one positional argument and two were given. Yes, so you see that my code, I have two arguments, right? Two arguments. So why am I having this? Takes one positional argument, but there are two positional arguments. Name and age are positional because I've not named them, right? They are positional. So why am I getting this error? That's because of the asterisk. Everything to the right must be a named, you must have a named keyword argument to the right of the asterisk. So to correct that, guys, there are two ways. Either just remove the asterisk and my code will run just fine, or put the asterisk and provide a name for that parameter. So age, and then a value, rather provide a value for that named parameter. Age will be 57. That's the default value. So guys, that settles it. When I run the program, oh sorry guys, I need to change this to age in that case. So age becomes 23. Right. Your name is Kenny and your age is 23. So I must name that parameter and then provide a value when calling it. So guys, I hope that's clear. That's how you enforce keyword argument usage. The next is variable positional argument length. What if, this is very important. What if I don't know the number of positional arguments I'm going to use or my function would take? What if I don't know as of the time of defining or creating that function? I do not know the number of arguments. So how do I prepare the function to take how, no matter how many arguments there are, I just need to provide Python the ability to detect that variable length attribute. So how do I do that? I would simply use an asterisk before the parameter. I'll use an asterisk before the parameter. Let me just still copy this code. Oh, okay. Let me create a new one, guys. Def sums. Let me just say def sums. Now I want to sum up numbers, but I don't know how many numbers. Variable no, number of numbers. So how do I let Python, prepare itself? I'll use the asterisk and then just provide a parameter. So I can just say nums. That's all. Okay, then colon. So how do I now sum up the numbers? Great. I'm going to use, in this case now, a loop to loop through all the numbers. So say a for loop for let me just use a there. A standing for that particular number within nums at that point in the iteration. So for a in nums, right? So before I do that, guys, let me create a variable to hold the sum. So the sum starts out at 0. So then within the loop, I will just say, so see the way I'm indenting, guys. For a in nums, then the sum should just change its value to the sum, the previous value of the sum, plus the number at that point in the iteration. So that's how I sum up the numbers. Okay, so next I'm going to do is now print the sum. Print the sum. So the sum starts at 0. I do cumulative addition, it just keeps adding to the previous, add a new number to the previous sum obtained, and at the end of the loop, I'll just print the sum. Okay, so that's it, guys. So I want to call the function and then provide different numbers. So the first time when I call, I may give like provide like 5 numbers, and the next time provide like 7. So the number of numbers varies. Sums. So for just separate them with commas. 4, 5, 7, 6, 8. Right. So I run the program. We see that it returns 30. So I mean, how did Python know that I was going to provide how many numbers there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was going to provide 5 numbers to be summed up, and I did not specifically spell them out, in function declaration. I didn't do something like this, standing for each of the numbers A, B, C, D, E. This is like cast in concrete. There must be 5 arguments. But to avoid that, or to make it open, just use the asterisk, and then you can use whatever number of numbers you desire. So I can even just add another number, say 12 to it. And when I run, I will still have meaningful code 42. So that's how you can vary the number of arguments of positional arguments provided in function declaration. Okay, right, guys. I hope you understand this variable positional argument length. Now, what about varying the number of keyword arguments? So this time, I'm not talking about the positional argument. I'm talking about the keyword arguments. How do I vary the number provided as parameters? Provided as arguments. We'll see. This time, you use two asterisks. Let me just get right into it. Def, let me say this time again, biodata 2, just for change sake, biodata 2. And I'm going to just say, just call this the data, or DT, or DD, the TD, the data, right? And in front of that, please remember to add two asterisks. Now this tells Python that there will be a variable length keyword argument. Okay, so Python just prepares a dictionary of those parameters. That's what it does, I'm going to use the colon, and I want to just print out one value from the dictionary that Python creates on the fly. So print your first name is, please remember quotation marks for strings. Your first name is, then I'm going to concatenate. I don't want to use the F command there to format the string. I just want to have my string concatenated with a variable, right? So TD, that's the dictionary, and the key for that will be the name, it will be the parameter that I provide when calling the function. So let's say I'm going to provide an argument called first name. First name. Okay. So I hope you get it, guys. Then what I'm going to do now is call the function biodata2 and provide, varying length of arguments. So I can now say first, make sure that there's no space there. First name, Lekon, and a comma. Second name, Ahmed. Age, 34. So I can add as many pieces of biodata as possible. I can even say nationality, Nigerian. All right. So guys, I have called this function biodata2. So when I run my program, we'll see the result. Your first name is, just let me provide a space there. 1 second. Your first name is Lekon. I didn't tell Python that I was going to use how many arguments there? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 arguments. So I didn't explicitly state those parameters in function definition. I can remove. So instead of having 4 parameters, I now have, instead of having 4 arguments, I have 3. The code will work just fine. The first name is Lekon. But be careful, guys. If I change the parameter keyword, the key for that, then there's going to be an error. Remember, I'm saying, oh, first name. If I have fn, for example, as the code to be executed, but did not include an argument with the same name as fn, then there will be an error because it doesn't know it. I'm trying to use something that, sorry guys, I'm trying to use something that doesn't exist. Yeah, so fn is provided in the in the definition of the code, but when calling the function, I'm using first name. There's that difference that will cause an error. Yeah, so we see, what does it say? Key error. The key is wrong. The key here is first name, like spelled F-I-R-S-T, capital N-A-M-E. That's the key. So why do I have F-N? The problem. So I need to change that for the code to work. First name. All right. Okay, so you can even loop. You can even loop through. Let me do something here, guys. Just to make the code a bit more complex, I'm going to use a loop to loop through all the parameters. So for key in TD, it's a dictionary. For key in TD, print key. So that's just the key. The key is what we need to pull out. And what's the value of the key? So that's what will be, provided as output, or that's what will come out as the output. So print key, and voila, we are set to go. Just like that. First name, second name, nationality. Those are the keys I am printing. Now, if I need the values, what do I do? Yeah, please, I encourage us to get my video on Python dictionaries. So if I need the values, then for values, that's all. For value in TD, simple as that. I run the code. Oh, sorry guys. For key, I can't have value. Sorry, I can't have value. It's right here, the key for TD. So I'm still going to use the name of that dictionary, TD, and provide the key to grab the value. So you see, we now have the values provided. Okay, so Lekon, Ahmed, Nigerian. All right, guys, just go to the video on dictionaries. You would see, how dictionaries are used in Python. Okay. Right. Now, what about lists and functions as parameters? Lists and functions as parameters. I've been using strings and integers. What if I want to provide a list? A list is like a collection of different types of data so that everything becomes one. It's stored in just one container, and I can grab the content of the container, that is the list, by the position of those elements. So that's the thing about the list in summary. Right. So I'm going to write a function. In fact, let me use this same function here. And just change this to, let the parameter be a list called my list. Now loop through the list for each item in my list. For each item in my list, print each item. For each item in my list. So now this each item is going to become will be the value of the element that is grabbed at that point in the iteration from my list. So the value of each item keeps changing depending on what position the loop is at. Right. So I'm going to just provide a list as an argument for biodata 2. And a list, the elements of a list are within opening and closing square brackets. So I would say names Ada, BC, Ifi, Fatima. Okay, so on and on and on. All right. So guys, when I run this program, as I call this function, we'll see what gets printed. Yeah. So in this example, I have used a list as an argument. I can even just store this first. I can just say the list instead of putting that list directly. Just store it in a variable called the list and then supply the list. So the list is still a list. When I run the code, I still get the same thing. All right. Now, guys, what about the pass statements? Pass. What does that do? I'm going to write faulty code, and you tell me, of course, not like I'll hear you, but just try to tell me what the problem is with the code. Def new squared and say for, I'm sorry, it should be num. That's a parameter, not the argument. Okay, so print nothing there. Let me just say call it new squared. Just call that and provide an argument 7. So 7 needs to be squared when I run. So there's an error. Why? Expected an indented block after function definition on line 2. Wow. So I'm trying to get something done and I'm not saying what should be done. I am not defining the something. So that's the problem. What code needs to be executed when the function is called? I haven't provided it. So that's a problem. What do I do, guys? I need to say, take this off. So I need to recreate the function by saying greet and removing this. Then I'll use the keyword pass. I'll use the pass statement. That's all. Pass. And let me call that function greet. And I run the program. So we see there's no error. This statement, the pass statement, is just used to avoid errors. So it's like a placeholder for some future code. I don't know what it is I want this function to do. For now, I don't know. So I just want to just define the function, but later add, the specific code for what specific thing or action it should undertake. So for now, I'm just using the pass word, the pass keyword. That's all. That prevents any errors. Right. And finally, guys, I have been defining my own functions, which is what you too should aim to do. Define and call your own functions for different things. But I mean, it's a programming language. Even though you can coin your own words, there are existing words already in English, for example. In a programming language like Python, of course, there are already functions available so that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just want to do something. I want to get the sum of numbers or the average of numbers, some things like that. Or I want to turn all my letters to capital letters. I mean, why do that from scratch when I can just pick from already existing functions in Python? So they are built-in functions. I'm going to use a built-in function in Python, but to do that, I'm going to use a module. Hmm. Some of us may not know what a module is. It's just a file that has code on a particular area, right? Or set of areas. So that I just pull code from that file into my current file to have something, done. That's what it is. That's a module. So there is a math module in Python that, you can use to do mathematical operations in Python. I'm I'm going to include it in my current file by using the import keyword, import math, just like that. So that's a module in Python that will enable me use a function called pow. So in the course of my explanation, I use double asterisk to represent exponents, like raised to the power of. But I can also just use a function, a built-in function in Python called pow. So we see, I'm just going to store this p number or powered number, just any name, powered number, and use the math variable there, math, and call the pow keyword. Now the pow keyword should have at least two parameters. The number that I want to raise 5 to the power of 2. That's just to square it. So that's already a function available in Python. So next I'll just print pn and I run. we see that it does the work for us. Imagine having to code do the coding for this thing. I mean, creating my own function. Yes, I can just, okay, let me create a function to do the same thing. The definition, exponents, just trying to avoid any Python keyword that there might be. Exponents, I'm sorry. So provide two parameters, num and exponent, xpn. Okay, the exponent. Then simply return, remember the return keyword. Return okay, I need something static. Let it just be 2. Expn equal to 2. Okay, or okay, no problem. Let me just still have that. Expn return num raised to the power of expn in Python. Okay, so that's the function that does the same thing as you have in the previous cell. Then I'm going to print. So a value is returned, and I'm going to print it. I'll call the function within the print method. Expon and provide the two arguments needed. What number do I want? 5. And then the to what power? Raised to the power of 2. And I print. So I have 25. So guys, you see the difference. I used a built-in for cell 66, or in cell 66, I used a built-in Python method called pow. And then for cell 67, I defined my own method. And I can change, just like I can change this to 5 raised to the power of 3, get 125, and also for this 5 raised to the power of 3, get 125. All right, now this for the POW, the built-in POW, the method the POW method we get from the math module returns a floating point number. It's a float. That's why you have 125.7. But the function that I define myself, return an integer. But I can coerce it, I can force the output to become an integer. So I'll simply call the int, cast it there, int method. And great, the int function rather, and then just run the program. So that gives me 125. Okay, guys, it's been a long lesson. I hope we learned the much we can, on Python functions. I'll see you in my next video. The next video, I'll still be talking about function, but a particular type of function in Python, and that's called the lambda function. So next video on Python, we'll discuss lambda functions. Have a great day, guys. See you in the next video. Bye.